Hey, welcome to Unlatched Mind. Thanks for listening. My guest today is Adina Bank-Lees. Adina is a licensed clinical social worker, a board-certified substance abuse counselor, and an expert in traumatic stress, as well as a certified psychodramatist. I had to Google what that meant. So Adina and I had been speaking for a few months, just trying to figure out what we want to talk about on this podcast. Originally, it was the topic was really the neuroscience around trauma and PTSD. So going back and forth, Adina really has a passion for her latest focus, which has been this covert emotional incest, CEI, and we'll kind of define what really the meat of the podcast is really on that domain, and what CEI is basically a type of abuse in which a parent looks to their child for the emotional support that would be normally provided by the other adult. It's sometimes sexual, but not always, and just essentially when, it can be characterized as when parents make their kids partners, and those kids are filling roles they're just not meant to fill. And again, those roles could be emotional and even sometimes sexual. Just prepping for this, just reading some of the examples, just to try to understand exactly what the CEI was really about. And, you just dig into, children and sexual abuse and emotional abuse and verbal abuse and all the nuances in between. And so it's tough not to have your heartstrings pulled a little bit when you're digging into some of this stuff. And, and this was, I would say, a different type of podcast than I've done to date. I thought it was a great one. I really enjoyed talking to Dina. I think, her passion for helping people is so obvious. She's such a sincere person, and I think that definitely comes through. So she also shares a little bit of her personal story, which, after you hear it, there's no doubt that, it's her past experience is something that certainly helps, helps fuel her desire to help others that are going through similar situations. So, all right, so I'll stop blabbering, and with that, I give you Adina Bank-Lees. Well, Adina, I appreciate you doing this. Thanks so much for your time. I think when we originally reached out to you, I had read a few of your blogs, and I had done a podcast prior on addiction, and I think I had read your blogs prior to even doing that one. But so you and I went back and forth, and you had brought up to me what some of your real passions are was this CEI, right? This covert emotional incest. So, I had, you brought that up a few times, and, I kind of dug into that just a little bit. And this might be a different discussion for me so far, that I was uncomfortable reading it. It was disturbing. And it's amazing that folks like you are bringing this to the surface. And because for me, just being the layman, the thing that just hit me is, well, first of all, obviously you're talking about children, which is just heartbreaking just to start with. And then you told your personal story on your website, which, was a little heartbreaking as well. But anyway, there's all kinds of things we're going through when I was researching this. So I do think it's a super interesting topic. And to your point, I think you had mentioned in, one of the emails, I think you're super passionate about making this, see the light of day, and making folks aware of what this is, so they can define it, acknowledge it exists, and start to maybe start the road to healing. So anyway, we'll dig into what that all is. But I guess to start, if you want to just introduce yourself to the listeners, and tell them what you're all about.
So hi everybody who's listening. My name is Adina Bank-Lees, and just professionally, a licensed clinical social worker, licensed independent substance abuse counselor. That's what they call it in the state of Arizona, which is where I live. I'm a board-certified expert in traumatic stress by an organization called the American Academy of Experts in Traumatic Stress. And I'm also a certified psychodramatist, and that is my, I think, my favorite modality and model of therapy that I do. So professionally, that's where it is. I've been around for about 30 years. And as part of my role of therapist, and you say, who I am, I have a great big heart. I care about people tremendously. I am ambitious and want to succeed. I'm creative, and I am a very passionate person about all that I do. I love to travel. I love to spend time with my family. I adore my almost 25-year-old son. I cannot believe that I am the mother of an almost 25-year-old son. I was just 25. Oh my God. So when I can say I'm in the field for 30 years, that's pretty shocking for me also. So I think the most important thing, Vinny, that I want people to know is that I'm a real person, and the way that I work with my clients and the way that I work with people who I train is by coming from being a person and making those kind of connections. Because without that, nothing happens.
Right.
And I can have I can be a great technician, and this at your job. I can be a great technician, but I have to be able to have relationship with people, because that's where, in my business, that's where the healing happens.
Right. Right.
Is in the relationship, yeah. And if I'm not authentic, and I don't mean I'm telling my problems to people, but if I'm not authentically present and real and there, nobody's going to connect with me. Nobody's going to feel safe with me to tell me anything, and forget it.
Right.
Might as well
Right.
somewhere else. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and you don't. I'm sure you have to toe that line about you opening up too much, right? But folks learning a little bit about your story, whatever that may be, and I don't claim to know any of it besides the couple things you've shared online, but I imagine that must bring folks closer. And it almost disarms them a bit, where and just the trust factor must go right up from there. But I'm sure that's a tough line to toe sometimes.
It is sometimes, and I know that we're not necessarily talking to clinicians on this podcast, but I do want to say that, and this is if the general public is listening, if anybody's listening who may be considering going and seeking professional help, I think a couple of things, and I offer people kind of the questions to ask so that you get someone who's qualified and who's a good fit for you. My guideline for self-disclosure is, do I have experience, strength, and hope to share with the other person? Because if I don't, then my sharing is just me kind of throwing up on the person or putting my stuff in the therapy session, which totally does not belong there. Because I've been a client for many, many years on and off doing my own personal work, and I've sat in session with my therapist with the question like, whose session is this? Because they're telling me about them. And then I would not go back. So, it's really, really important that it's experience, strength, and hope. And that when people come, they want to know, do you have expertise in this? Like, are you professional? Yes. And, because that provides safety. And I'm also a human being, and I'm here to really help guide you, like go where you want to go. And I can go deep, Vinny. Like I can take people where as deep as they need to be, and I can also help them to, kind of come back and be okay by the time that they're leaving the session.
Right.
And I think that's a skill, but it's important for people to know that, to ask for credentials, to ask about what philosophy is, to ask, how much do you talk about you in the session to the professional? How much do you do that? Is it something I've walked into therapy saying, you know what, I don't want to know about you. I listen to people all day long.
Right.
And so, therapist, I don't want to know about you. I want you to simply listen to me, and I want you to give me guidance and suggestions. So I get clear about what's important for me, and I'm able to put it out there. And I think that's a skill I have because of the work I've done and how long I've been doing it.
Sure, right.
I recommend that for people because I want them to be an educated consumer, and not just go in and kind of like a doctor's office, like I don't have any power. You're the one who has all the power.
Right.
So I don't know if any of this is helpful, but I get a lot of people asking me, how do I find somebody who is good and who's going to be a fit? And I think some of those questions are important. And I'll give two last things, is to actually ask for a free 10 minutes, 20 minutes, either on the phone or even in somebody's office, so that you can physically, face-to-face, be in their space and see if you're comfortable in that physical space, to see if you're comfortable with this person. We were talking earlier, the facial expressions, et cetera. It really makes a difference when you're sitting with somebody. So I say to people, trust your gut. Like if you're sitting there and it doesn't feel right, then it's not the right person to be with, and say, thank you very much. Uh,
Yeah,
so.
that's great advice for sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How do most professionals respond to that? The free part might is, is
Yeah,
is it
well, most people, most clinicians will give you time on the phone. They may not give you the time in their office,
right,
but
right,
they'll say, you know what? Yes, of course I want to talk to you on the phone because and this is in people in private practice now, they want to make some kind of an assessment right up front to see if they're the best person to help you with what's going on for you.
right.
So absolutely, 10, 15 minutes on the phone. Now they don't want to go on for half an hour, 45 minutes and have a session with you on the phone first.
Right, right.
But 10, 15 minutes, I always offer 20 minutes in the office because I do want people to come in and I want to see them because I really want to see, is this going to be a match? And I've at times said to people, where do you want to go? Does this feel, well, I always say, does this feel right? The two of us get to make that decision. And there have been times I said, you know what, based on what you're telling me, I don't think I'm the best fit. I have referrals for you and I have these three names for you.
Right, right. Yeah, it's two-way for sure, right? You want to know if they're the right patient for you and vice versa, right? They need to know if you're the right doctor
Exactly.
for them. Yeah, that makes
This
absolute
is a
sense.
collaborative relationship. It's a collaborative relationship. Yeah.
Yeah. So how do I mean in terms of your specialty? Again, I'm just gathering from our email dialogues, but you had a lot of content out there on addiction, on PTSD, a lot on trauma, right? I feel like and the theme throughout, and this is not me just blowing sunshine, but the theme throughout all your writing is you've said it a few times in your emails that there's definitely a passion for helping. You want to heal people. I think you have a calling for that. Just with the little that I know, that really comes through in how you write because almost every one of your blogs ends in, well, it's not just a diatribe of some cool psychological terms and psychoanalysis. It's really, you almost end almost all of your writings as, well, how do I, you introduce the topic, you'll, dig into it a little bit, get a little technical, but then you really focus, maybe it's a quarter or sometimes even a third on how do you get help? How do you heal from this? So that was just a little compliment I'll throw at you. It definitely seems like that's a
Thank you.
major theme in your work for sure. So, now in terms of addiction, trauma, the CEI, where is that? Is the CEI area been where your majority of your focus has been recently?
Most recently, yes.
Okay.
And in terms of my training, in terms of the therapeutic work that I do, I'm really where the client is. And so I have clients that are specifically dealing with that, and we're dealing with that right now. I have clients not necessarily, and they're dealing with many other things, mostly addiction issues and post-traumatic stress disorder issues from childhood abuse and or neglect. And it could be anything could be physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, which would CEI's in there, but there's other forms of emotional abuse that somebody was shamed terribly over a period of time. So I'll give you an example. So just yesterday, and I'm running a lot of groups now.
Okay.
So somebody said, yeah, well, I just was told, I'm not enough, and I never felt like I was enough. And so that kind of message that a kid will take in, because a kid takes in from the adult caregivers in their life as it is true. So if they hear, you're a piece of junk,
Right.
they believe that very rarely. And once in a while it shows up that somebody will say to me, I knew at 3 that they were full of baloney.
Right. Right.
But very
Right.
rarely will I hear that. But I have heard it. They're like, I knew this family was crazy, and I had to just stay in this house until I could get a job and take care of myself.
Right. Well, good
But
for that
most
person, right? I mean, but
exactly,
that must be super rare. Yeah.
it is rare. Most of the time, it's okay. So you're telling me this, and that must be true about me. And so that's where we see I'm doing a lot of doing some of my work in residential treatment right now, where people come for 30 to 45, 60 days because their life has gotten so bad and they have had such difficulty functioning that just going to a therapist once a week, isn't going to cut it. They need to be at a place to
Yeah.
really be able to get that level of support. And so we're talking about this is very serious stuff. And so it's a great environment to be able to really have somebody, all they're doing is functioning on their recovery and their healing. They don't have to drive. They don't have to be a mother. They don't have to be a father. They don't have to go to work, right? They don't
Right,
have to
right,
pull,
right.
get themselves together. They can just focus. And so we do very deep work, and people really are honest about, yeah, this is the message I got from beginning. So another example, I work with many people who are adopted. There is a whole different piece about being abandoned and not wanted that gets in your nervous system and in your belief system about you when you've been adopted, even if you've been adopted at birth. And you might say, well, you don't remember that.
Hmm.
Your body, then your body remembers it. Your nervous system remembers it. There is a, you are, you are pulled away, and your attachment to the person who you were literally symbiotic with inside the body for 9 months. You were fed that way. You heard the heartbeat. You heard the breathing. Uh,
That's fascinating.
yes. And so when you're born, what they do now, and they didn't a long time ago, but they know better now. So they put the baby right on the mom's chest. As soon as the baby's born, unless there's medical issues, the baby goes right on the chest and is
Right.
swaddled, right? Is
Yeah,
swaddled
I vividly remember that.
because,
Yep, yep, yeah. I have a
remember that?
6-year-old and a four, almost 4-year-old now, and that definitely jumped out at me. They made a point to, mom, okay, mom, here's the baby, and we were lucky enough that there was no medical issues, and my mom had some toughness right after, but as soon as she was able, within an hour or two, whatever, the baby
Right.
had to be right on the chest, just get that heartbeat feeling, get that relationship going. They made a really good point about
Exactly.
that. Yeah, that is super interesting. So a child that would be so you're even referring to a child that was maybe separated at birth.
That's correct.
So really no conscious recollection
Correct.
of mom. And wow, so they know something's missing on some level, even though they never had any conscious recollection of who their mom was.
That is correct.
That is
And there's
crazy.
a whole body of literature about adoption now and the issues that people show up with adoption. So it
Wow.
is critically important, for a clinician to be asking those kinds of questions, and to be aware of that there are issues about that, because a lot of times people say, well, I was very lucky. I got adopted into a great family. So how could I be feeling this kind of abandonment, or like I don't belong, or I don't fit, or, I have a desire to really know who my birth parents are because I want to know who I look like.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Say, well, just be grateful. Just be grateful that you got into this family. Well, we have to validate that people have other stuff going on,
Right.
and at very core level, nervous system level, and we could talk about this another time because we get into a very technical neurobiology conversation, but your nervous system really sets up to be able to calm itself, to be able to know that it's safe and it's okay and its needs are going to be met. That happens on a non-conscious level.
Hmm.
And if the child is taken away from that, and it is the mother because the child's been in that body,
Right, right.
um, the nervous system goes, what the heck? Where am I? Who is this? This is a different smell. This is a different voice. This is all different. I don't know where I am, and this is scary.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is this how recent is this? I would say discovery, or how long has this been going on? With this has been in the literature, and science has been poking at this.
Early mid 90s,
Okay.
25 years maybe, not that long.
Yeah, not that long. My gosh. Yeah, it's the more I speak to folks like you and others, it for me it seems like we have so much to learn. I feel like we're at the 1 yard line in terms of the brain and just neurobiology in general and neuroscience in general. And I just feel, I know, I mean, science is obviously is accelerating, but I don't know. I just feel like we don't know much. And maybe I'm on the outside looking in. I might be wrong, but just hearing, it's amazing. Um, it's just amazing how much there is out there.
Yes, and you're absolutely right. Even though you're not in the field, we don't know a whole lot more than we do know. The 1990s was the decade of the brain. And that's when the functional MRIs and PET scans, and we started paying attention to what's going on in the brain and the nervous system, and the research exploded. And it does continue, but it's very, very recent. And the psychiatrist that I know said this. She said there's about 15,000 chemicals running around in your brain, and we know something about 6 to 8 of them. So does that put it in perspective?
Yeah, no, yep. That's yeah, that's insane. That's absolutely insane.
Yes. And we're learning a lot more about those. However, we still don't know a whole lot more than we do.
Right. The fact that we know this about 15,000 chemicals means we're getting there to start to know. At least we know what we don't know, or approaching knowing what we don't know.
Right.
That's pretty insane. Wow. So I guess if you could define for everyone what CEI actually is, and we'll kind of go from there.
Okay. Covert emotional incest. It is an elusive form of sexual abuse that does not require direct bodily contact or genital contact. So there are 3 pieces here. And we say, well, why do you call it incest then? Right? Oh, I call it incest for three pieces. One is it's happening between a parent most of the time, an adult caregiver, and a child. So we know we have many different kinds of constellations of families now. Mm-hmm. All right, so we want to so it's a caregiver and a child. Excuse me. There's something called triangulation that happens in the covert emotional incest dynamic, because it's a dynamic that happens in families that directly impacts the child. Mom and dad, let's use that just for a classic example. Mm-hmm. Mom and dad, they don't have the skills that they need to deal directly with each other in terms of their conflicts. And so what they do is they use one or more of their children to be in the middle of that, to be kind of the communicator or the confidant. And so that's where the triangle comes, because mom and dad are supposed to deal directly with each other. They are peers. They are in the power roles in the family. Mom and dad are supposed to have the power in the family and make the major decisions. Do we agree with that? You're a parent, 4 and 6-year-old. Are you going to allow your 4 and 6-year-old to tell you where you're going to live?
Right. Of course not. Right.
No,
right.
You're going to make those decisions, right? So, and your job is to be there and make decisions in their best interest, even if they don't like it.
Yep.
Right? And that's some of what our parents today, and I'd say in the last generation, even when I was parenting a young child, oh my goodness, what if the kid is mad or they don't like me, or, I have to be their friend? No, you need to be their parent.
Parent first, for sure. Right. Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
So let's say, all right, there is a power differential, parents more power than kids. Something called the intergenerational boundary, that is a non-tangible energy and knowledge that says to the parents, you guys deal with each other, you're the ones who make the decisions, and you don't share certain information with your kids. For example, you don't share that you're struggling to make the bills, and you don't talk about how scared you are that you might not be able to pay the electric bill this month, and how are you going to scramble for the money?
Right.
Why wouldn't you share that? Because a kid can't handle that. They can't help you out. That just scares them, and there's nothing they can do about it. So their nervous system can't manage that, and it's going to be very frightening for them.
Right.
Makes sense, right? I mean, that's pretty simple.
Yep.
What happens in covert emotional incest is mom and or dad or both say, you know what? My emotional needs aren't being met by my spouse. Oh, you know what, honey? This is some of what I heard. I can talk to you in a way that I can't talk to your father. You really understand me. and you can help me with getting your father to do X,
Hmm.
or you can help me get your mother to do Y. Uh, so that is a whole different story. So emotionally, what happens to the child? Well, it's, oh, I feel special. Mom's telling me that, I make her feel better. That's what kids want to do.
Right.
If I cried and got upset, my little 2-year-old son would come over and try to give me a hug
Right.
and, Mommy, feel better. And I said, honey, yes. And I would explain to him, I'm having feelings and I'm feeling sad, and feelings are okay. And it's not your job to fix it. And thank you for the hug because it feels, I
Right. Right.
appreciate your love, but it's my job to deal with my feelings. Well, in covert emotional incest, no, it's the child's job to deal with the parent's feelings. And they feel special, they feel powerful. However, as my dear friend Sonny told me a long time ago, the bigger the front, the bigger the back. The front is special in power, the back equals I'm different, I don't belong,
Hmm.
I'm terminally unique, and powerlessness and helplessness. So, Vinny, I could never fix my mom or my dad. I could never fix my family. I tried. I was put in a role. The system put me in the role of the confidant and what I call the emotional mistress, uh, to be able to fix them, have them be happy all the time, make everything good. I could help with that for a little bit, but it never got fixed. Why? Because it's not my job. I don't have that kind of power to do that. Kids don't know that. Kids are narcissistic. Kids are, what I mean by that is they developmentally, they think they have superpowers. It's
Right.
called magical thinking,
Right.
right?
Right.
So if they, and I've heard this how many times, that a kid who grew up in an abusive situation said, I hated my parents so much. They were such a drunk, or they sexually abused me. And then they had a heart attack and died. And I thought I killed them.
Hmm.
And they were carrying that guilt for years. Now they're an adult. They're 45 years old sitting in my office, and they're telling me how they killed their parent because they wished they were dead.
Right. Right.
They're still thinking as a 3, a 5, a 6, or a 7-year-old.
Right.
Make sense? Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, I'll just push you right there. One question I had: Do you see, and then whether it's your personal experience or you in that in that clinician seat, when these families are going through this, do you find the parents are more explicit about it and conscious about what they're doing, or are they truly are they truly searching for that confidant, that partner, and maybe they don't even consciously know the damage they're doing, or the misplaced role they placed on the child, or is it a little of both sometimes, or is I'm trying in my head, I guess, just trying to balance
Mm-hmm.
the I guess the more evil aspect of it, which when I talk about children and all this stuff, I just get very, like, it's tough for me to stay unbiased. It's just like, have children. It's like they should be allowed to see the world through rose colored glasses until they get to a certain age, and then 18 or whatever, then life's going to just smack them around. But and understood, they have to deal with hardships in the right constructive way, so they realize how to deal with problems and all that. But
Yes. Yes.
that misplaced role that you're talking about seems so damaging. Just and in a sneaky way, right? You kind of touched on it a second ago, and I think in one of your blogs you said the whether, I don't know if it was you that had said it, or this example in one of your blogs, a 7-year-old, the child's feeling both superpowers, powerful and powerless at the same time. So it's not that explicit with a child can just see the danger and say, I don't want to go near there. That's a hot stove. I'm not going to touch it. That's obviously a trivial example, but this is when put in this position, the child feels that power, wants to help mommy and dad. Who doesn't want to have a nice, stable, happy family? Or maybe they're thinking, if I just do this, then mommy and dad will be happy again, and we can have the family dynamic that they deep down want. So they want to, like you said, be in that role. They feel that power, but yet it has such a it's just such a backlash effect, like you had said. So I guess circling back to my question, do you feel like is it more explicit on the parents' end and or evil, if you will, on some level, or is it just these parents are just suffering, or the caregivers are suffering in their own right, they don't even realize what they're doing, or is it some combo?
Most of the cases that I've worked with is that they had no idea.
Yeah.
And they had no idea there was anything wrong. They didn't even know they were doing this. Like it was very unconscious.
Right.
There've been some cases where it has been more deliberate because the caregiver who's doing it has some personality issues, like somebody who has something called narcissistic personality disorder, where it is all about me and I don't really care about you, or using it to be able to get back at the other parent. So there are cases like that, but the majority of cases that I've worked with, and I could say personally, in my own personal experience, there was not a clue about any of that was happening. So, yeah, I don't think there's a conscious evil necessarily that's going on.
Yeah.
But what I hear you talking about how passionate you are of protection, of protecting of kids, the protecting of their innocence.
Yes.
And that, right? And
Yep.
that's a beautiful thing. And it's, makes me think of Child Protective Services, Vinny, only came on board in the United States in 1976.
Oh, wow. That's the year I was born.
Okay. So we think about that, and you might say, we've gone overboard because a kid can say, my dad hit me, and then CPS is called, and then there's a big, thing that happens in the family. And those cases happen. And that's, no question.
Right.
That's not the majority of it, though. But why I mention that is because we, as a culture, just started to see children as people. When I was a kid, it was kids are people too.
Yeah.
The children as people and to protect them, because historically, kids were really seen as little adults. And they weren't treated, you think about child labor, and they weren't treated well. And now we're in a place where we really do want to protect them. We know more about this stuff about neuroscience and how important it is for kids to be able to have healthy attached relationships with caregivers and safety and all this kind of stuff, to be able to allow them to have a childhood, allow them to develop into really well-functioning adults.
Right. Yeah.
So it's just important to know that, protection didn't come into the collective psyche, if you will, until, 45 years ago?
Yeah, that seems it's amazing. Yeah, it seems way too late in the game because, the typical family structure has been around a lot longer than that. So you can imagine, these.
Well, it's okay, and I've worked with many clients who are in their late 60s, even now, and I'll think, I got beat with a switch, but I'm fine. I got smacked across the face. I can't tell you how many times. Like my father said, you're going to cry. I'm going to give you something to cry about. And I'm fine. Like, I don't understand why, these kids are such wusses now. And so corporal punishment was seen as norm. There was no place to go to say that anything was wrong with it up until the mid 1970s. And we've learned a lot, from there. So again,
I could
for
speak from
listeners,
personal experience. It extended past the 70s. So, we grew up in an old Italian neighborhood, and it was pretty much commonplace. It was just that's how stuff got done. That's how you quieted the kids down. That's how you kept them in line. And it was.
That's right.
But it wasn't even a one-off thing. It was so common, you just almost didn't even think anything of it. Dad's coming home, pissed mom off all day. We're going to pay for it.
that was the norm,
it
right?
It really was, yeah.
So we didn't question it because that was the norm. That's what happened in our home, and so that we didn't question it. Right.
And sitting down talking for an hour about what happened that day, and let's have, why, it was, and we just get a little personal here. Our family was really good at having dinners every day together as a family, and hey, who'd you hang out with today? Who'd you how's school going? Like we did had a lot of good like that. But like I said, the common theme around the Italian neighborhoods where, yeah, you if you messed up, you got smacked around a little bit. It was just kind of the
Hmm.
thing, and but
Was that for girls as well as boys, Vinny?
I don't have any recollection of for me. I just had one brother, right, and then I have all my friends were just boys, so I don't remember
Okay.
any of the. Yeah, it's funny you say that because it's always been a question. Like, hey, we joked, hey, what would the old neighborhoods been like back? If there were everyone had daughters, right? I mean, it was that would have been an interesting dynamic to see what that would have been like. But
Yes, and how differently the
yeah,
males
yeah,
have been treated. Yeah.
yeah. But interesting. But and as I'm talking, I'm thinking of other questions about how young are some of these children that we're talking about here in your experience?
Uh, it could be as young as 4 and 5,
Mm,
where mom would come into the bed at night, and I'm giving you little scenarios from clients over the years now.
hmm.
4 or 5 years old, mom comes in crying. Uh, Dad, one was very trouble. Dad had just raped mom, and mom came to the little one about that.
Mm,
And what is a kid supposed to do with that, right? But don't tell anybody, of course. And now the kid's having a secret. But
gosh.
5, 6, 7, I'm lonely. Either mom or dad coming in, I'm lonely, and this is going on in the marriage. Your father doesn't want to have sex with me. Your mother is cold. And so there's sexual content
Mm,
that's getting shared. So again, I want to go back to the incest because that's the main question I've had is, well, why do you call it incest and not just like a breach of boundary or the role is different or a therapy term is enmeshment?
mm,
Why don't you just call it that? And I say, because sometimes there's sexual content literally spoken about, which is very overstimulating and sexualizing to the child. Their brain has not developed to a point, and they're not, excuse me, it's not age appropriate for them to be hearing that kind of information. They don't know what to do with it.
right.
So it stimulates their nervous system. Their body may respond, even to just talking about it their body can begin to respond. So they're having physiological experiences that might feel good, might feel overwhelming, and they get very confused. That really happens with people who are physically sexually abused. And we can talk about that another time because one of the main pieces I hear often is how could it be abuse? If I had an orgasm? How could it be abuse if it felt good? How could it be abuse? It was the only kind of touch I got that felt good because otherwise I got hit or I got nothing.
Mm,
So I don't want to, go there so much. It's a different topic, but I just want people to hear that there's a lot of confusion because most sexual abuse happens in the family with somebody the kid knows, loves, and trusts, 90+%.
right.
And that's when the secrets are held. So this emotional sexual abuse, emotional incest, the topic is being discussed and or here's even more sneaky, like use that word, that's what covert is,
Hmm.
intangible, under, is that there's sexual energy that's getting passed in between or from the caregiver to the child. And I'll give you an example. So when I was around 13, I felt like I felt this, like I was having an affair with my father. There was no physical sexual touch, and I thought I was crazy because I don't have any evidence of anything, right? And when I was told about covert incest when I was 26, my therapist said to me, "It makes total sense that you felt that way because dad singled you out. He held you as very special. He would use you as the confidant. He did focus on your body, tell you how beautiful you were and how important that body was. So you did feel like that because my dad and I would go out together on our own, and that doesn't mean any daughter should not have a relationship with her father. We're talking extremes now, okay? So I was 18 or 19. Dad and I were out for dinner, and Somebody came by and said, "Oh, is this your wife?" And we laughed. We thought that was cute and funny. I always looked older than my age. I always acted older than my age. That's another
Right.
setup for CEI. You're 3 going on 35. You're so mature. You can handle this, all this
Right.
stuff. And the truth is that this person picked up on the sexual energy that was going on between my father and myself.
Hmm.
And so when I was and I went to residential treatment back in 1990 because I was at a place that I was not in a good place, so let's say that. And I needed that level of support and care. And that program had what they call a family program, where the families came in and you did family therapy. And so my parents and my brother came, and a couple of things happened. Miracles happened in that family week. One was I was able to say to both of my parents very specific behaviors that they did that I learned was covert emotional incest. They didn't have a clue. They were blown away,
Hmm.
right? They were blown away. I was able to say it. It got validated for me. My mom and dad said, yes, we did that. We had no idea what hurt you. Yes, we did those behaviors. My mom said, yes, I was jealous of you when you were a teenager because you had more attention from your father than I did. And one of the lines also was, your father listens to you, he doesn't listen to me. So these are some of the covert, it's not direct message. Your father listens to you, not me.
Right.
Your
Right.
father would rather be with you than me. So think about what a kid is going to start thinking and feeling with that. So those got validated. And one of the really significant things that blew me away was my dad, who was a psychologist. He's passed away now. He had 2 master's degrees. And he said, I learned more in 5 days of this family program than I learned in 2 master's degrees, an education degree and a psychology degree.
Wow. Wow.
So, yeah, that really, I could cry about that right now, actually, because it meant so much to me that he really was there. He was present. He was listening. My parents loved me very much. I mean, and some of the confusing stuff for people who have been covertly emotionally incested is that there is love there
Right.
and it's twisted and it gets confused and misplaced roles, you said. Perfect way to put it. And so it's a mishmash. It's entangled. It's messy, and it's very painful. And yes, it is damaging to who am I. Sometimes who am I sexually gets in there.
Right.
So yeah, the last thing I want to say. So I want to be really clear. Covert emotional incest, elusive emotional form of sexual abuse, does not have to have direct sexual, genital contact, or even physical contact. There's triangulation, caregivers not dealing with conflict directly. They are using one or more of their kids as an intermediary and an emotional confidant or support. There's objectification. What's the objectification? It could be sexual objectification. Oh, look at your body, all kinds of comments about bodies. So young women say, yeah, my dad was talking to me about my breasts when I was 13 and mentioning and commenting either how flat-chested I was or, yeah, I was really developing and look at that.
Hmm.
Or maybe even touching, and at a 13, you don't want anybody, especially your father or mother, to talk about your body.
No.
And you don't want anybody touching it either. So those kinds of things, you say, oh, come on, what's the big deal? Well, it is a big deal. And again, that's the violation, the emotional sexual violation that can happen with CEI. And objectification just in the point that the child is being used. This came up in a training I did 2 weeks ago where the person who was playing the role of the child said, I feel like an object. And the person who's playing the role of the father that we're playing this out, he said, yeah, well, she was just a tool that I was using to get to so-and-so. And I said, that's it exactly. No longer is this the child and a human being. This is the tool I'm using.
Hmm.
Object.
Yeah, I mean, in your case, I guess one thing that popped out at me is I was going to what I was going to bring up. I didn't know your father was in this field. That was interesting, and because when you were starting to talk about their responses, it's like, well, they sound very examined people. Like they're not just, because I imagine I feel like most people don't really truly live examined lives where they're always in retrospect of how they're thinking, how they're feeling about things, how they're talking, how they're how they're raising their children. And most people want to do the right thing, but it's hard to figure it out if their actions are having this consequence or that consequence. You hearing your dad, especially his response, that he learned so much, and some of his responses he had before you had mentioned. I imagine that's more rare, where most folks can't wrap their head around what they're doing. Where your dad, obviously, with that training, just his it just kind of just a light bulb went off. He said, "Holy crap, what have I been doing?" Like he didn't even realize it. But I imagine most of the times these, it's just so gray and so abstract of some of these concepts. It's not very easy to understand for someone. It could take, I would imagine it takes years for folks to just realize what they have done, by using the children in these misplaced roles and whatnot. So I guess in your case, I don't want to overstep here, but perhaps you were lucky that you had that. It took a long time, but that meeting you had, that 5 day, was it a 5 day? I'm sorry, 5 day
5 day, yeah.
was obviously, it seems like that was, amazing in your life. And you had parents listening, truly listening, not just, all right, we'll get through this, and they go back to their normal day-to-day thing. So that was, that's certainly a silver lining there. But wish it was that easy for most folks, but I guess I'm sure it's not.
It's not easy for any of us, and I am very blessed that I had parents that were willing and that were there. And it's important to say that it didn't all go perfectly after that.
Sure.
And
sure.
so we were working with this dynamic and we still are. My mom and I still are. So up till my dad passed, yes. And I write about some of that in my book. And so that it's not perfect, but we're consistently working on it. And this thing called boundaries, that as I became an adult, it was important for me to begin to learn how to set them and how to enforce them.
Right.
And that's a lot of the work that I do because I work with adult clients. And so I work with them about what is a boundary, what boundaries do they have rights to have, how do they set them, and then how do they enforce them? Because oftentimes people say, well, I set the boundary, but the person didn't listen.
Right. Enforcement's key.
And I'll say to them, well, it's not their job to listen.
Right,
Right. It's your life. It's your job to enforce them. So we want to go for And so to be honest, Vinny, most families that I've worked with, like you said, the parents want to do the right thing. And so when their kid, and for me, mostly as adults and young adults, anybody over 18 or so, says, hey, these are the behaviors. This is how it's impacted me. These are the feelings that I have, and this is the message I got. This is what I believe about myself because of these behaviors. And that's my job as a therapist, to help my client get specific about those and be able to put the emotions with it and how I believe about myself now and how it's contributed to the difficulties I'm having. The parents' ears are mostly open. They're scared because they didn't want to do any wrong. Oftentimes, big time guilt comes up. Oh my God, I was the most terrible mother and father ever, blah, 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 blah. And I need to coach the parents on, if you go there, you just lost your kid again. Because now it's all about you.
Right.
And it's really important that you sit, you can listen. We'll give you support, you'll definitely get support for that, but it's really important that you're present. And that you listen, and that whatever you can validate, that you validate. Even if it's like, you don't remember doing it, you go, I could only imagine that you would feel that way. It makes total sense to me, because that's the healing agent. And the healing agent is, you know what? If I had to do it again, I'd do it different.
Right.
And I would do this. And what do you need from me now? So I see that happen, and there are families that I see it not happen because if it's too scary for the parent to look at their own wounding that set them up to do this dynamic in the first place, it's
Hmm.
not going to change.
Well, that's a really good point, and that I had taken a note earlier. You know, uh, so yeah, so I was thinking as you were talking, you had mentioned one of the responses from parents is that immediate dive into, oh, I'm the worst parent ever. That's one response. Was another is some of the other responses you get, almost denial slash
Yes,
defensive, like I would never do that, I didn't do that, that is not what
yes,
happened,
yes.
right?
And that, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And so it's really important when I work with the client and or the family for the client to know, to see that information and then to make decisions based on that. So what we say in my world is you're not going to go to the hardware store for bread.
Right, right.
You're not going to go to the empty well for water.
Mm,
So let's get realistic about who your parents are and what they're capable of
right.
and what's going on for them right now. And if they are not a place for you to land softly and to get validated, then your job is to find a family of choice and hang out with people who do validate what's going on for you and who can support you in doing the healing, because your blood relatives, caregivers, may not be or are not the place to do that.
Mm,
So that's another very important part of treatment.
right, right. Yeah, family versus relatives, I think you just alluded to, which is an interesting. A friend of mine said that, gosh, decades ago. I'll never forget it. He said because he had some family dynamics that wasn't great, and God, this is probably 30 years ago. I can't believe I remember that long, but he's like, well, they're my relatives, they're not my family. And I mean, what was I? I was a young teenager. I didn't even know, like,
What did that
yeah,
mean,
yeah, I
right?
kind of got it, but in hindsight, he was, it was a brilliant comment. You choose your family. Family has a certain responsibility and definition it needs to uphold, values it should uphold, and how people are treated. And you said relatives is just a blood thing. So it's interesting. You kind of sound like you just alluded to that. But
Yeah, so family of choice we talk
yeah,
about, and how cool can it be if you have a family of choice with your blood
yes,
relatives?
right,
That's a
that's
blessing,
right,
right? That's a blessing. In my world, I don't see a whole lot of that, but I know I have a skewed view because the
right,
people who come to
sure,
me,
yeah,
so I see
right,
that.
right,
So there was so the other reaction you said either the terribly guilty or the defensive, this didn't happen, how could you think
right,
that
right.
way, you know I'm not like that. Yes.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, part of me is thinking most, and I'm thinking of the parents and then the child. So in my head, I'm just a triangle, just one child on the bottom, two parents. I feel like the parents would most times be good, would be very loving and want to be great parents to their children. They're experiencing some interpersonal issues, whether, you know, so I almost feel like, is it mostly just misplaced on the child, where the child where the child is an unfortunate, casualty in the whole thing, but they still are generally want to be good parents and feel like they're good parents, and the issue is mostly with their spouse or the significant other or the co-parent or whatever you want to call it. I mean, I feel like it seems like the child is always just almost an innocent bystander in this case, where they're not the object of the problem. It's just that they're the closest thing to the other person, right? I mean, I don't know if I'm explaining it well, but I feel like it's the problem is with each other, the parents, the caregivers,
That's
right?
correct. That's correct. Yeah, the problem is with the parents. So I want to say a couple of things about that. Daniel Siegel, psychiatrist out of UCLA, who really big in the field now of neuroscience. He developed something called interpersonal neurobiology. And if anybody's interested, Dan Siegel has so many videos on YouTube, and he's written so much, and he's all over the place. So what he would say, oh God, my brain. This is what happens when you're 56, almost 57. You're talking, and then it just shuts down. So I'm taught. All right. So go for your question. All right. So the innocent
Yeah,
bystander.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So Dan Siegel has co-authored a couple of books on parenting. He just came out with one for adolescents. He's got a couple on young children. what does he focus on? He focuses on the parents, the caregivers. Why? Because that's where the issues are and that's where the healing has to happen. So, what he says, and I see this all the time, so if a parent has trauma in their own childhood or does not have an experience of what we call secure attachment with their own caregivers, secure attachment equals I'm safe in the world. My parent or parents really, they met my needs pretty much in a timely, consistent manner, not perfectly, but they saw me, they kept me safe, they encouraged me, and I knew they had my back.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I usually don't see those people. They don't show up for therapy. Okay. Why would they come to
Right.
me? So he says if somebody, so parents get into, they carry that forward, they cannot be present for their child for the most part the way that the child needs. Why? Because they didn't have that in their experience, and they have some attachment trauma. That's what we call it now. Attachment trauma or broken attachment or wounding that they will need to work on and do some personal work to heal before they can provide that real safe attachment, secure attachment for their kid. And those wounds show up in the marital or coupleship relationship. And in couples therapy, the whole theory is we get attracted to somebody who's going to help me heal hopefully, heal my wounds from childhood and help me grow into being more of an adult and continue to grow. So if I'm in a relationship with someone and I would have complementary wounding, so I'll give you another personal example. So my first marriage, here I am, somebody who, what do we want to say? So my attachment style is I want to be right there in your face, very close all the time. Who do I marry? I marry a guy from a family that was very what we call disengaged. They didn't have much relationship. They still didn't, not much contact. And he needed a lot of quote unquote space. Right?
Yeah.
So I'm attracted to this at first. I'm like, this guy's really cool, And of course, I want to go, oh, I'll get him to connect and
I'll
do all this
change him.
stuff.
Yeah.
I'll change him. And this is going on partly consciously and partly not. And he also, in the first year or so, is really attentive to me and, giving me everything I ever wanted and charming. And then, then we get, we get
that's the in
engaged.
love high, right? That's the in love high.
Exactly. And it is a high. We have these chemicals that go
Yep.
on, but they don't last more than about 18 months. And so after that, it's like your eyes open. You say, who the heck is this now? And you're either going to either get help. If you can't do it yourselves, which most people can't, you're going to get help to be able to see those different styles, and each of you help each other to change a little bit so that you can meet each other's needs, which means healing some of that old stuff,
Right.
being there for each other, and growing into a new closeness, a more mature kind of love and commitment. Or you're not going to be able to do that, and either you'll be in an unspoken or silent divorce,
Right.
or you'll get a divorce.
Right.
So that's why prevention and doing, for parenting skills are so critically important. And one of the things I feel so sad about and frustrated about is the lack of attention and money, or priority. I don't want to say attention, the lack of priority, which equals funding, that we in this culture give to our young children, our families, our parenting. We don't do it. So people don't have the skills, the tools, and the availability of resources to help them to heal those attachment wounds.
Yeah, you could almost argue that, and as we're talking, it's almost like the damage done for with bad parenting. I'll just say bad. It's just not just Just to put it
Okay.
broad stroke, whether it's intentional, it's complicated. Life's really complicated, and there's no manual. You've heard that. We've all heard that joke
That's
a million
right.
times. Everyone's so busy, especially nowadays. So I don't I don't know if the true cost is even known, right? I mean, you could almost argue that so many of our problems with incarcerations, with the drug abuse, with this,
Hmm.
with that, could all stem from something went wrong upstream, way upstream. There was something wrong in the home that made one child go left, the other child go right. There's you could almost trace back so many of our issues that are so costly today. I would say to rectify, right, to whether incarcerations or whatever it might be, where you'd almost go upstream and fix the source of the problem. Now that's a perfect world, right? Like, hey, mom and dad, here's what you do. Here's the book. Here's the video. Just do this, and you'll be fine. Now, maybe someday, this is pie in the sky stuff. Will neuroscience progress to the point of don't say these 30 words, never raise your voice to this, and if your child sees this traumatic thing, you could hit a button and maybe erase this part of the brain. Like maybe someday, 100 years, 1,000 years from now, we'll get to that point. Who knows? But it's just so damn complicated. I mean, life gets insanely complicated. So it's almost like you just got to do the best you can and just and fully, I think, even say it out loud sometimes that the children are so important. That it has to start in the home, and you just have to think every day. What are they seeing? What are they seeing? Are they seeing me grab a couple too many drinks here? Are they making jokes about that? Did they see me yell at their mom? Am I at work too much? Did I not go to enough of their social events? Do I not know who their friends are? I mean, you can go on the list of things that are seemingly benign and relatively minor, but I think it all adds up. And then you go to the extreme of obviously there's domestic abuse, there's sexual
Right.
abuse, there's the real hard stuff that you and others are trying to, pouring your life's work into helping, which is, the rest of us are super grateful for that. But I mean, we're coming up on an hour here. What do you think? What keeps you motivated and optimistic about the whole thing? Because I have friends and family in social work in general, and I'll just put that broad brush term social work, but
Hmm.
it's such a depressing line of work. I mean, and I'm so grateful for folks like you because it's how do you? I mean, you have to absorb so much, just this fire hose of negativity and hurt and pain all day, and then go home and go back to your family and try to brush it off and hit the reset button and put a smile on and not bring that home. I always say that about like EMS workers and firefighters and police officers and military.
Sure.
It's like how do so grateful for that whole world. But I guess what are you optimistic? Do you see some good progress in the field, or is it more bleak where funding's not there, understanding's not there, priority's not there? I mean, what are your thoughts?
Uh, I know we're coming up in the hour, so I want to answer that, but I want to go back when you said it's so
Sure, sure,
complicated. I want to really validate that because I don't want people listening saying, oh, I'm done a terrible job, and if I just did this, it would all be perfect.
sure.
No, never perfect parenting. What we're going for is good enough. And that's from Winnicott back in the 50s. Good enough. That's all we need. Good enough. Uh, in a timely manner, consistent enough of the positive stuff. It's critical that kids see that there's conflict between parents. I'm not saying yelling and screaming, but there's conflict, and that conflict gets worked through. How does it get worked through? So there can be tension, and then we work it through, and then we can have our nervous system be regulated and things can be calm because that provides the kids, oh, this is a safe place. Oh, there is stuff that happens in the world. I can learn these skills. I can be equipped to deal with the world.
Mm.
If we shelter them too much, and you have a 6 and a 4-year-old, okay, you're not going to be having an argument in front of a 6 and a 4-year-old with your
Mm-hmm.
wife. That's not appropriate. But to get a little bit heated and to have a disagreement and then to work it through in front of them, yeah. As they get older,
Interesting.
not yelling, screaming matches, but developmentally, for them to see that conflict, yes, it is important because it's in their home. You are their role models of how to be adults and how to do healthy relationship. They need to see it. They need to see the affection. One of my favorite things was to see when we were having dinner, because we had dinners also growing up every night. The music would be on, with very musical family, and the music would be on, and my dad would just take my mom's hand and go into the living room, and they'd start dancing.
Right.
I cannot tell you the
Right.
joy,
Right. Right.
like, the joy of that. So, yes, it's complicated and we do the best we can. And then the other question is I am extremely optimistic, and I'm very optimistic because I see miracles every day in my work. I see people having ahas.
Mm-hmm.
I am honored by the being entrusted with very personal, vulnerable parts of them and stories. And so it's a real honor to do my work. Do I get tired? Yes. Have I learned over the 30 years of how to not take everything home? Yes. Has that been a process for me? Yes. At times, do I feel burnt out? Yes. What do? I have to take care of myself. I go on really good vacations. I laugh a lot. I make sure that I'm outside. Nature's a big healer for me. I have to get filled up in that way. So I do those kinds of things so that I replenish myself and I just don't get empty because I give a
Right.
lot.
Right.
And I have colleagues, and I'm involved as well politically to get the attention and get the funding where it needs to be. And I will not give that up. And I am a social worker, and part of being a social worker is being a community and global change agent.
Right.
And so I'm committed to that. Yeah.
Hmm. Well, I probably sure I can speak for most people listening. I mean, we're grateful for the work you and others are doing because it's especially when it comes to kids, right? I mean, and I say kids. I know you said you work mostly adults, but their issues started as children a lot of times. So, that it's the children thing is just it's like I said at the beginning, this was a different type of podcast for me. Just reading some of the material, I was getting and I didn't even recognize it at first. I was starting to get a little sweaty and uncomfortable. My palms are sweating. I'm like, why am I usually love reading about this stuff, and it was just the kid thing and some of the stuff you had written about, and I watched your personal story online and things like that. So, which appreciate you sharing some of that personal stuff, by the way. That's not always easy.
Absolutely. No, and same here. And if my thing is, if I can be a model of experience, strength, and hope for others, it's like it's okay to share my story. There's no shame in it, and if it can be helpful to somebody. And I
Right.
think, Vinny, before we close, there's one last thing
Sure.
for me, and that is, let's not leave out because I think we can. So we're talking about parents and the family. Let's not leave out kind of the socio-political, racial place that people are living in now because, and I'm doing a Psychology Today blog post on boys and men of color. That's going to come out next
Mm-hmm.
week. And not going to the individual family unit, taking a look at how poverty, discrimination, the atmosphere of violence, what a high percentage of young men of color live with how many friends and relatives have been killed by guns and, violently, that the minority people, the people of minorities are living in these kinds of environments. And this is extremely traumatic. So I get away from CEI a little bit, but just to pay attention to that
Right.
level of trauma, okay, is really important for us. And that's where we can make some big changes. And I'm very, very committed to that.
Yeah, it's all related for sure, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. And really, the last thing, and this is what happens to me, I go on and on, so stop me. But really, the last thing about CEI, we can close it up with this. Families at risk for CEI are alcoholic, other addicted family systems. Why? Because one or both of the caregivers are not available.
Right.
Family systems where there's chronic mental or medical illness. Why? Because one or both of the caregivers are not emotionally available. Where there is death of one of the caregivers. Why? Because one of the caregivers is not available. And a single parent home is you want to talk about complicated. You have to be mother, father, every role. You don't get to share that with somebody.
Right.
And so if you have no other resources, but you have kids in the home, you are at risk to get those emotional needs met. And that's a scary place. And it's not about blaming. It's about noticing, being aware that these families are sensitive. They're at risk for this. Let's get the help. Let's get the help to them.
Right. Well, I have a lot of notes here, so we'll definitely have some follow-ups to this. I'll definitely be sending you some notes and looking for another time to do another one here. But where can folks find you?
They can find me on Twitter at Adina Bank Lees. And they can find me on Facebook. I have a professional page, Adina Bank Lees. They can find me at my website at www.adinabanklees.com. And it's ADENABANKLEES.com. And I have a YouTube channel as well.
Okay, yeah, I'll throw all four of those in the show notes, so folks can easily just click those links and go look you up.
Thank you, and the Psychology Today blog. Let's not forget about that as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's how I found you originally, actually. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Dina, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Take care, Vinny. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
And that's pretty much it. Thanks for listening. See you next time.